One of the reasons that people want to open a franchise is they want to be in business, but they don't have what I would call a Shark Tank idea.
So, guys, today I'm bringing you a good friend of mine, Sara Waskow. She is a dear friend, just a badass, and does a lot of very, very cool things. So, really quick, here's her bio. So, Sara worked at AT&T for 10 and a half years, helping small business owners with their equipment and long-distance need before resigning to stay home with children. She worked for a website online marketing company for 6 years, helping small businesses. She then started her own company called FranNet, which I'll let her tell all the fun stuff about it, but she's doing some very cool things in the franchise world. So, Sara, I'm really, really excited to have you on the show. I hate reading all these bios out there, but I get people to send them to me for ammunition. So instead of me reading it all, tell me your story, tell me how you get here, your journey, and all that fun stuff.
All right, absolutely. So one thing I tend to leave out of my bio is I did have about a 9-month stint with a financial advising company. At the time, it really wasn't financial advising. It was just selling insurance. So I'm 23 years old, newly married in Fort Worth, and trying to sell life insurance in a whole new town where I did not have any relationships, and it was just truly not a good fit. So I usually just kind of leave that little part out. So I started with AT&T, and I sold both equipment and long distance. And I was in Fort Worth, loved Fort Worth. It was all face-to-face, B2B, and enjoyed it, but it was difficult with children. And so by the time I had my second child, it was just time to step back. So I was a stay-at-home mom, did some part-time things. And when I got ready to go back into the workforce, I was able to do this work for this website company, and I was able to work from home. So I still had flexible hours and could manage my own schedule, which I'd always loved. A lot of things changed with that company. Long story that I will certainly summarize, but they were based in Bethesda, Maryland, and so I worked remotely from home. I was the only person here in Texas, and when it started, it was good. It was a good fit, but a lot of changes in the company, just like a lot of people experience. And essentially, let's just put it this way. I got a call from the CEO, and he said, you know, your numbers aren't where they used to be, which I knew they weren't. A lot of changes, as I had mentioned, in the company, and I was getting burned out. And he said, so, you know, Sara, we need to cut your salary in half.
Oh.
So, yes. So it was not a situation of, you know, we're going to let you go, because I'm sure he wanted to save on the, the unemployment.
Right.
So then he expects me to do the same job for half the salary. And so then he proceeds to tell me, you know, Sara, this is just nothing personal, but we're a small company. And for me, this is the difference between a vacation and a nice vacation. That is exactly what he told me.
What a way to motivate your employees.
So at that point, I was like, okay, this is not happening. My brother-in-law had been laid off. He'd been with the company for like 17 years, was in his early 50s, had taken them public. He was CFO and had basically worked himself out of a job. They didn't need his expertise. They had younger people doing his other responsibilities. So he was looking into franchising, and that's how I found FranNet. So my sister was sharing with me they were looking at franchise opportunities, and I thought, oh, well, I'd be interested in consulting. Don't know that I want to own a franchise. So I explored. The owner lived in McKinney, needed help in Fort Worth. That gave me the opportunity to get back face-to-face in Fort Worth, where I loved working. So I joined him. But essentially, we educate folks about opportunities and help them find the right fit. He decided to retire back in 2015, so fortunately, I was able to buy the franchise from him at that time. So I've been the owner of FranNet Dallas-Fort Worth since January of 2015, and so we are a franchise. FranNet's been around for 31 years, and I'm just the franchisee here in Dallas-Fort Worth.
Nice. So you go from phenomenal life insurance salesperson
at 23 years old
to AT&T, working them for a number of years, pop out a couple of kids. Have a couple of kids.
Yeah.
Go to the stay-at-home mom route, get an online job, and get basically corporate downsized, you know, through that process to opening basically your own franchise through, I mean, how it all
That's right.
out.
Yep.
And now you would advise people on buying a franchise and helping them go through the process of buying franchises.
That's exactly right. So I really kind of laugh that I've gone full circle because I went from corporate America to the website company was a startup and they changed and evolved and that sort of thing to now being a franchisee. And that's what I like about franchising because it's a hybrid. It's a hybrid between that startup and that independent entrepreneur and corporate America.
Yeah, 100%. You know, it's going to be a fun conversation because I've had the luxury of working on both sides of the franchise. I've actually worked for a franchisor and I've been part of a franchise, being a franchisee. So it'll be fun as we dive into that. As you're going through this whole process and now you're essentially selling franchises. I mean, I know you're selling the representation of them, but you're meeting people from all walks of life that at some point are trying to figure out what's their next move, what's their next stage of their journey. And you're helping them decide if franchising is a good fit for them. How does somebody know that franchising is something that they should look at or maybe they should do at all?
Yeah, so most of the people that come to me don't know. They don't have any idea. They don't understand franchising. It's a whole new world to them. And so that's a lot of what I enjoy doing is providing that education and helping them assess if it is something that can help them meet their goals. That's really what we want to evaluate is what are you seeking to accomplish? Financially, lifestyle, what do you want? And once they go through the process, they may decide it's not a franchise. And, you know, that happens quite a bit and that's okay. That's actually still a positive for me because I've helped them gain clarity and then they can check off that box and really move in another direction and figure out what it is that they want to do. And not all of our clients right now, I always try to help them understand it's not necessarily an either or. We have many clients right now with the economy good looking at investing in a business alongside whatever they're currently doing to generate another stream of income, or maybe for a family member. I just had a client who just turned 60 and he has an adult son in his 30s. And so he bought the business. He's keeping his job and they're going to oversee it, but their son will be the manager of the business. So it's a way to leave a legacy and get family members involved also.
No, very cool. Very cool. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of philosophies surrounding franchisees, and I'm going to try and keep my opinions to myself somewhat. With franchise, you know, there's one philosophy that says, you know, franchisees aren't entrepreneurs. There's another philosophy that says they are. As people are looking at this as a business that they should or should not do, basically, why should somebody open up a franchise versus just starting their own company?
Yeah, I mean, that's great. So a great question. One of the reasons that people want to open a franchise is they want to be in business, but they don't have what I would call a Shark Tank idea. You know,
I like that.
They don't know what they would do. They've come from corporate. They've maybe been in IT or they've been an engineer or they've been an accountant. And they're thinking, well, how do I start a business from this? You know, and so that's one good reason because it allows them to be in business, but they don't have to figure out all the intricacies to get going. Anybody, I know you work with a lot of entrepreneurs and, you know, that is tough. You're trying to figure out all the processes and systems and marketing and just everything. So people that buy a franchise are, you know, in a situation where they want somebody else to have already done that. And then part of the due diligence process is they have to get the information, make sure they believe in the processes and systems and want to and are willing to follow them. I tell them all the time, if this is not, you know, something that you're willing to follow once you buy in, don't buy it.
Right.
You can start on your own in lieu of buying a franchise and then not following any of the processes and systems laid out for you.
I would definitely agree that somebody who's going to be tremendously successful at a franchise has to be a little bit crazy, but be willing to follow the processes that are laid out along the lines.
People a lot of times just don't have, I hate to say the wherewithal is not the right word, but they just don't, maybe they don't have the energy, maybe they don't. I mean, I can speak from experience because we opened a gym and when we were prior to opening, there were things just arriving at our home that we didn't order. we didn't even know what they were for, but the franchisor knew that we were at the phase of our build out where we were going to need these items soon. So that was like already taken care of for us. So it's really nice to, again, kind of go back to not have to figure all that stuff out.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I love that you brought that up because you are a product of your own process. I mean, well, your husband is,
Yes.
Opening up his own franchise, which is the coolest concept for a gym. Because it's all, well, you tell us, how does his gym work?
One of the things with our gym, it is 24/7. So what was appealing to us about it is that it's not staffed all that time. So you can stay open even when somebody doesn't show up for work. So that was a very appealing element of a small staff with large opportunity for revenue, members, that sort of thing. So you're talking about 5 to 6 staff members and, over 2,000 members in a gym. Whereas if it's other services, for example, it might be one-to-one, like hair care or nail salon. So it's a lot more moving parts. You have to have those appointments and some of those things. So that was really appealing to him. It was the simplicity of it. And they like to move into underserved markets. So we had to be open to the mindset of being in a rural community, but it served really well for us.
Nice. So somebody comes to you, they're not sure what that next stage of their journey is, and you introduce the idea of potentially doing a franchise. Walk me through the process somebody goes through to figure out if franchising is for them, and then how they choose a franchise, because it's a cool process you go through.
Sure. Yeah. So we really start with education. I don't work with anybody until they have attended one of our workshops that I do locally, or they've participated in a national webinar. We do those through corporate. We record them. So just depending kind of on their situation, their timeline, et cetera, they either come to a local workshop or they view a webinar. It's about an hour to an hour and a half. And it's just a really good overview comparing starting from scratch versus buying an existing business versus, buying a franchise. We talk about franchise disclosure documents. That's unique to the franchise industry. Franchises are regulated by the government. So we talk about ways to fund a business. And if all of that is something that seems appealing to them and something that they want to pursue, their next step is to complete an assessment. It's similar to a Myers-Briggs or a DISC that many people are familiar with. It was developed specifically for FranNet, and we just ask a whole lot of questions about their background, their strengths, their weaknesses, their interests, what's important to them in a business. We ask some situational questions like how they might handle certain things to really measure their compliance ratio. If their compliance ratio is low, then we might have a conversation about them being happier starting something from scratch versus buying a franchise. We learn their comfort level maybe with risk and some things like that. So that's a good baseline. That's preliminary information, but definitely not a tell-all. And then if things still are in line, one thing really important that I don't want to leave out is they have to fill out some financial information. We don't do a credit check, but we really do need to have a sense of their net worth, because franchisors have net worth requirements. And so if that's not in line, I may have to tell them up front that this may not be the right time. I don't want somebody to be undercapitalized.
Even with that, you have levels of franchises. I mean, you got franchises that cost $10,000 to $20,000 to the franchises that are 7 figures.
Yeah, and I would say most of the ones in our inventory are going to be over 50. So I say our inventory, FranNet goes through a vetting process to approve franchises. We have about 150, so we don't work with all. And probably the minimum investment is going to be 50 to 60 and on up from there. So yeah, all that into consideration. So here's an example. We have somebody, and not to be critical of a particular industry, but if you've got an IT person or maybe an engineer, they have not experienced any business development in their career. They've been in a technical environment and potentially are unable to invest more than $100,000. That limits us. The franchises between 50 and 100 are generally work from home, go out and build that brand awareness. A lot of them are business to business. The investment level is lower because you don't need, a Class A retail location. It's not an if you build it, they will come type scenario. You might have a small office or work from home, but you've got to be responsible for going out and developing those clients. So that could be anything from expense reduction, B2B, maybe sales training, trying to think, staffing. There's some education programs, some supplemental education programs that are offered in schools and community centers, those types of things. They're not brick and mortar. You're providing a service to someone. So you have to be comfortable out building those relationships. So sometimes we kind of have a catch-22 or kind of hit a brick wall if somebody doesn't have the investment range necessary to get a brick and mortar, but then they are not going to be comfortable with that type of business.
Well, and one of the things that I love about your process is you're not trying to just shove them into one franchise. You're really trying to go through the process to understand what are their strengths and weaknesses, and then find a franchise that fits their skill sets.
Absolutely, yes.
Which is huge because you're not representing one franchise. And one thing I know about franchises as a whole, and this is 100% a blanket statement, is they're in the game of selling franchises.
They are, but good franchisors are good at telling somebody when they're not a right fit. Good franchisors know that it does no good to them to bring the wrong person in. They have a failure.
You have better experiences than I have.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, and that's why we vet, right? That's why we only have 150. It doesn't mean that the rest of them have been, ruled out. Not all franchisors need us. We don't represent the brands that have so much brand awareness with the drive-by and
you're not representing a McDonald's or something.
Exactly. So that's a surprise to a lot of people that we don't even have really any fast food in our inventory. A lot of these, I mentioned that we own a gym. They've been around for 15 years, franchising for over 10, but they had not made their way to Texas. So a lot of the franchisors have longevity, they have experience, they have history, but they want to, develop, build out, move into certain markets, what have you, and don't have the, marketing capacity to do that. So they rely on people like us who live in our local markets, who build relationships, who meet these people and make that match. And so ultimately, that's how we are paid when we bring somebody to that franchise. So it's no cost to our client. Our process takes about 3 to 4 months. Because after we meet with them, after they've done the assessment and then they start doing their research, we're communicating with them. We're finding out what they like and don't like so we can figure out, are we on the right track or do we need to go a different direction? So, if somebody's not working, they might be a little more centered and focused, but certainly when they're working, it's at least 3 months, maybe 6. 9, whatever. We go at the pace that they want to go at.
Yeah, and that's a really, really, really cool point that I love about your process is it is cost people absolutely nothing to go through the process because you aren't making the money off that individual. You're making the money from the franchisee because you're out doing all the, pardon the expression, dirty work for them of the scouting and vetting and bringing them to the table, which is really, really cool. So if somebody wanted to explore franchising as an opportunity, this is a no-cost entry way to look at it. Well, I mean, your time costs a tremendous amount, but to look at franchising as a whole.
Yeah, which is a lot of the reason that we do the assessment and all the upfront work, because my role is to mitigate risk and simplify the process. So people will come to me and they've been spending a ton of time looking online and they don't know where to start and they get attracted to something because of a product or a service. So we just kind of try to reverse engineer it. But that being said, I do make sure that the client understands it is a time commitment and that we're both in agreement before they start the process, that they are going to follow the process. And I use a lot of Sandler, training to get the upfront contract and say, this is what I'm going to do for you. And I'm asking your commitment to do this with me so that we can both get to an end answer. That's the goal. Get to an answer. And again, it could be yes, it could be no.
Well, and I would suggest that people are better off going through a program like yours versus going straight to the franchisee in the first place, because you're really giving an unbiased look at franchising as a whole and helping people figure out what's that proper move for their journey as they go forward versus potentially being stacked up against a sales guy who needs to make a commission for a franchising. And I'm not saying all franchisees are bad or by any means, but
right.
At least this way they can go through a process.
You can't generalize when it comes to franchisors. I mean, there are aggressive ones, there's good ones, there's bad ones, there's over 3,000. And so that's one thing I want my clients to know that all franchises are not the same. Some have a lot of structure, some have less structure. So what do you feel comfortable with? Do you like all that structure? I mean, that client that I mentioned that, was buying the business for his adult son to run, he was very process oriented and very structured and needed that and was comfortable with that. And, some of the franchises that he looked at had a much looser process. And so he wasn't feeling as comfortable with that. So that's really a lot of what we try to evaluate. So much of it comes down to culture. And that's one thing I want the client to understand. You may or may not like this person, this salesperson, to your point, on the front end of the process, but that's not who you're going to be working with after you buy the business. If you buy the business, you're going to be working with people on the back end, the operations people and the support people. So you got to make sure that you're comfortable with those folks because, you're committing to generally about 10 years is how long the average contract is. Now, that doesn't mean you can't sell your business prior to that. I bought FranNet Dallas-Fort Worth when the owner had been in about 2 or 3 years.
Right.
It's not saying you're in it for that long, forever and ever, and, there's no way to get out. But you do want to make sure that you have a trust and a comfort level, and culture is really key throughout the whole thing. And that's my role, is to make sure they're getting that information and not hastily rushing into things. I have to slow people down sometimes because there's emotion in it. And we try to minimize that.
Well, and another thing that was a shock to me is just because I know some of your story from the years we've been hanging out together, is that the age ranges you dealt with, I always in my mind skewed that they were always to an older generation. I'm actually surprised at how many younger people are coming to you to start down this process. Walk us through kind of some of the demographics of people that are buying franchises. Yeah,
and that's a great question, a point, because it's changed a lot. So when I started back in 2012, most of my clients were, and that was when you and I met, so it's probably why you had that mindset that the clients were between like 45 and 60, and they had been in corporate and they had either been laid off or were sick of it and had walked out, on their own. People are working longer. So, we still have those folks that want to keep working, but maybe don't want to stay in their current career. But a lot more of our clients are in their 30s and early 40s now. They are recognizing at a younger phase in their career, a younger stage of their career, that they don't see themselves there until they retire. And I mean, I can show my age, but when I got out of college, that's the way we expect it to be. I mean, my dad had worked his way up in his company from the drafting room at a steel company. That's where he went right out of college, to plant manager. And that was kind of the vision I had. I'm going to get this job with this company and I'm going to stay there for 30 years and I'm going to get that gold watch and I'm going to retire. And people just, companies don't have that loyalty, and, workers, people don't have that loyalty. They get restless, or they see things happening in the companies with all these changes and are ready to move on.
Yeah, and that's what the fun thing about the culture and society is, how fast everything is changing now, and people are doing things at younger things. And that's one cool aspect of franchising is traditionally, and you've already said it, is the average contract is 10 years, so you're not committing to the next 40 years of your life. You're committing to 10 to figure out whether you choose to stay with a seller or whatever you want. I mean, so It gives you that freedom to explore.
Yeah.
As you've gone along with your journey, what are some of those big lessons you've learned along the way? Because, you've been doing this since 2012. You had some great successes. I know you've gotten your teeth kicked in a couple times, going through this process. Walk us through some of those fun stories of, the wins, the losses, and those type of things.
Oh, goodness. Well, I will tell you, probably one of the things I've gotten a lot better at is pre-qualifying clients. One of my biggest struggles is not being able to help everybody. I really want to be able to help everybody. And sometimes it seems the people that want it the most are the ones I can't help. Like, they're just not financially ready. And that's a hard conversation to have. But a lot of people come to me and think that they can get a loan for, 90% of the full investment level. And that's just not the way it works.
Right.
A bank's going to need you to have 25 to 30% of your own money. And I cannot bear to see somebody take all of their savings and put it into a business. They have a family and they, say, well, I have all this in the bank. Well, what if somebody is sick, or what if something changes, or somebody's hurt and you have an emergency? You've got to have a cash reserve. So that's a lot of the, kind of struggle, I would say. And so early on, I spent a lot of time with people that, because I really wanted to try to help them, that I just
Right.
wasn't able to help. So I think I've gotten better at qualifying those people. There's definitely some wins and definitely some losses. I've had some that they hone in on something and, they get through the process really quickly. I've got another gentleman who is just the nicest man, but I've literally been working with him for about 15 months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that's tough because he still says he's interested, but he's just had a lot of, there's not a lot of pain, and he got really sick for a while. And this is a real good example for anybody going through the process. I tell them, they're evaluating you just like you're evaluating them. And a lot of things impacted this, and I won't go into the whole story, but basically he dragged his feet too long and lost his chance. The franchisor just got to a point where I think they feared that he wasn't going to be able to make a decision. And so franchisors, and I respect them for this, good franchisors will tell you, no, you're not the right fit. And so, yeah, unfortunately there are some just out to sell franchises, but the good ones are going to say, we want everybody to be successful. We want you to have success. Your success is our success, because they make money on the royalties, obviously. And so we feel like something else could be a better solution for you, and they don't want somebody to get in and fail.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that I loved about the franchise world, being on both sides, is when you're an entrepreneur going out on your own, I mean, it gets real lonely real quick.
Yes,
you're 100% doing this on your own and figuring anything out. When you get a part of a franchise organization, you're buying into almost a family of other people. Some people have carved a path or a few years ahead of you that you can get mentorship from. The corporate office has their process and things they go through. And you're usually starting out with at least a couple of other people that are starting their franchise. So you get these kind of brothers and sisters in arms as you go through the process. So it helps you really create a community going through, and you don't feel like you're on such an island out there in the world.
Totally agree. You're in business for yourself, but not by yourself.
Yeah.
So that kind of goes back to culture, and really, as you go through the process, one of the key things and one of the most important things is talking to other franchisees and seeing if these are people that you feel like you're similar to. Do you feel like it's an environment where people are willing to help each other? We kind of have a joke at FranNet that plagiarism is not only accepted but encouraged. So if somebody has done something successfully, we're willing to share it with the other, and we have send emails and, hey, has anybody done this or that? And, maybe if there's a presentation we need, I know, I've asked for PowerPoints on this or that maybe somebody else has done. That's not my strength. And so if I can avoid having to do, create something on my own and spend a ton of time, then somebody else already has it, then everybody's been very supportive and willing to help and provide insight. So.
Yeah. I would tell anybody that opens any franchise is you better get good at some sort of business development, because the life and death of a franchise is the ability to hit numbers, as you go through. So if you're going to evaluate an organization, one of the things you want to find out is how strong are they teaching the business development side of it.
Absolutely. And what kind of marketing support are they going to give you? It's definitely key. Everybody has to sell something. And granted, we don't work with McDonald's and that sort of thing. So most of them are not an if you build it, they will come. People are going to, know who you are the day that you open the door. A lot of what we work with are those that may be emerging or maybe they've been around a while. I mean, we definitely have some big names. I mean, Hair Care and some of those that, you recognize. But even with that, you have to be involved in the community. You have to let people know you're there.
Well, and I think that's key is with any franchise is you're buying a territory. And that territory is going to be whatever's in your local town, and you have to be willing to become part of the community.
Absolutely.
That means joining organizations, joining associations, joining chambers, and becoming a asset in the community.
Absolutely.
It's not Field of Dreams.
Right. No, exactly. And you have to, give back in ways, sponsor things and that sort of thing. Also, certainly, I was going to say brick and mortar, but even, the B2B stuff, you still have to be viewed as an integral part of that business community or that local, town or whatever. So even some of the names that you would recognize, there's lots of choices out there for people. So you need to give them a reason to come to you.
Yeah, absolutely. In my words, the bigger and louder you go, the better it is.
Yeah, I mean, there's a loyalty there that you create and that sense of community, and that's kind of what we try to do with the gym, so that another one comes into town, people feel like they're, in a family environment there. We know their names. The management and our staff knows the people's names so that they really feel good about coming in there, and a lot of people do go because of that community and keeps them from being lonely.
Right. One of my favorite questions that I love to ask on this is if you were to go back to zero and start all over again, knowing what you know now, what would be some of the biggest things you would have changed up on your journey?
Oh, great question. Honestly, I probably would have done this sooner. That would have been probably the biggest thing. But I really can look back and see how each phase of my journey has impacted the next one. So I feel like what I am doing right now I can relate to everybody. I had the corporate stint, so I can get what they're all telling me about corporate America. Even though I left 20 years ago, I still experienced that. Then I experienced being at home and kind of having that urge to go back, but knowing that my role at that time was being a mom and taking care of my kids. But then also being with the startup, what I did was I spent time on my phone all day, every day for 6 years. But a lot of what I do initially with my clients now is starting with a phone call. So I feel like that 6 years of all that, selling and consultation and advising gave me a lot of training for helping people feel comfortable. This decision to buy a business is huge,
right.
Or not to buy a business, obviously. It's a huge investment. Might be spending more than your house, certainly more than your car. You are getting into a relationship with this franchise, just like when you date and get married, you've got to get to know each other and see if you're ready to make this long-term commitment. So I feel like that I've been able to utilize each element of my past at some point in what I'm doing right now, and that has been huge. So, the only thing I think I probably would have done differently is just left the other company sooner and started this. But I kind of feel like everything has its own time, and for me, the timing was good for all of this. And then when my 10 years is up, we'll see if I decide to renew, see what's going on in my life at that point. So.
Well, and I think that's key for everybody as they go on their journey is wherever you're at right now is a place to learn, a place to gather knowledge, and a place to figure things out, because the next stage of your journey, you're going to use everything that you're doing now to further the rest of your journey as you move forward. It's fun that people can actually look back on their lives and go, man, that is why I went through that shitty time in my life.
Yeah, I agree. And I really can look back, and even though, I had a negative end to my last job, a lot of people that I work with have had a negative end. And so I just feel like every experience that I have had has played into my ability to relate to and understand and empathize with what people are doing now. And even right now, I experienced my first year as an empty nester, which was a big change for me after having my first child 25 years ago. A lot of the people that I work with now are kind of in that phase too. So like the husband maybe has been working and the spouse has been home with kids, and either the kids are in high school and really don't need mom anymore, or maybe they've gone and the wife is looking for something to do.
Right.
She doesn't want to go back to corporate. She's been a stay-at-home mom, and it would be hard to get back into corporate after that much time off. And nor does she have that desire. She's controlled her own schedule, and now to be back in corporate again is challenging. So I can certainly even relate to that phase with a lot of people is, hey, my wife really needs to do something. She wants to get back and do something. What kind of business could we do? I have a lot of clients like this where she can kind of oversee it, and I'll keep my job, but we're building an asset for our family. I spoke to a gentleman like that this morning. They have a lot going on. They're going to downsize and do a lot of things, make a lot of changes. He's not confident in the future of his job. He has some other job opportunities. He still has some financial obligations with kids in college and that sort of thing. So he said, ideally, he gets a better job and they find something that she can do that keeps her active and gets her back involved in the work community, building an asset for their family while he still keeps that income. And I don't want to use the term guarantee, but maybe steady, at least for the short term.
Right. Which is awesome, because really at the end of the day is what you're doing is giving people options.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah, that's just huge.
Yeah.
Sarah, this has been a fun journey. Thank you so much for jumping on this with me today.
You're welcome. It's fun.
here's how I like to end every one of these episodes is if you could give people that one piece of advice, kind of that statement or that tagline that they could take with them for the rest of their journey. Maybe it's like their torch they carry with them as they move forward, tackling on life's challenges and winning the battles and everything else. What would be that thing that you would tell them to take with them as they continue on their journey?
I would just, really tell people if they are confident in themselves, that is key to whatever they want to do. Have confidence in yourself. I always tell my clients, you got to have confidence in the franchisor, but more importantly, you have to have confidence in yourself. And get out there and utilize every resource that's available. There's a lot of free resources out there that people don't realize when it comes to business ownership. So take advantage. Don't do it alone. It took me a long time, but one of the things that I'm really grateful for is having people do things that I'm not good at for me, so that I'm not spending my time doing things, wasting that time, and I can focus on the things that I'm good at and have other people do things that they're good at. So using that support system and not trying to go at this alone. There's so many resources out there for people. That's awesome.
Sarah, thank you so much for that. Thank you for your time on the show, and thank you for spreading the message. How do people get in touch with you?
So lots of ways. Our website is www.FranNetDFW.com. It's FranNet DFW.com. My email is swaskow@FranNet.com. Or my phone, my office line is 817-519-3952. Happy to chat with you.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you again, Sarah.
You're welcome. Thanks, Donnie. It was fun.
Guys, thanks so much for listening to this episode. I hope you were impressed by it as much as I was. Man, keep kicking ass in life. Please do me a favor. Comment, share, tell your friends about this. Every share just brightens my day. I appreciate it.